Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here today to help celebrate Cheyenne's 150th anniversary. See if I can learn how to operate this. We are here today to recognize the founding of Cheyenne and the arrival of the Union Pacific into Cheyenne 150 years ago. Until the railroad was constructed, this land was wide open spaces inhabited by Indians and buffalo. The railroad brought settlers and established terminals along its lines. After many years of congressional debates arguing whether the railroad should be built along the southern or the northern routes, that didn't change. We have a May Day here. Did I do something wrong?
I doubt it.
There. What did I do?
You went to sleep.
You went to sleep? Yeah. So did I.
You're good.
Okay. After many years of congressional debates arguing whether the railroad should be built along the southern or the northern routes, Congress finally decided on the central route because the states of California, Oregon, and Washington were separated from the rest of the Union. President Lincoln signed the original Pacific Railway Act on July 1st, 1862, and a subsequent modification was made in 1864, allowing additional land grants. The eastern terminal for the Union Pacific was selected at the western boundary of Iowa at Council Bluffs. On the west end, the Central Pacific was constructed eastward from Sacramento, California. Lincoln was a young lawyer defending the Rock Island line, and he had had previous knowledge about railroads and their importance in the development of the country. This image shows the track-laying gangs working across the prairie. The men were out of bed and had breakfast by the time it became daylight. So had the graders who had preceded them, laying out the roadbed, the surveyors who had preceded the graders, and the bridge builders who were working far enough ahead to avoid delays when it came to a river or a gully. In 1867, financial burdens plagued the Union Pacific, and through the Ames brothers, the Credit Mobilier scheme was adopted, providing additional funding for the construction of the Union Pacific. Well, this is not. There we go. The construction army was under the direction of General Jack Casement and his brother Daniel. It was a collection of ex-soldiers from both Union and Confederate armies, ex-convicts, Irish and German immigrants, and an occasional settler from along the way. As many as 10,000 people came to be involved in grading the line, building the bridges, and laying the track. Their pay ranged from $2.50 to $4 per day, excellent wages at that time. These hardy men lived on buffalo meat, bacon, beans, hardtack, and coffee. This monumental task handled by the Casements was similar to maintaining a military operation, an experience that they had gained in the U.S. Army. Locating the line with surveyors was a very risky task. The Indians caused surveyors a lot of trouble. When the Hills party was surveying near Cheyenne, they were ambushed and Hills was killed. Dodge named the town of Hillsdale in his honor. Generals Dodge and Rawlins directed the surveying crews to stake the boundaries of Cheyenne in early July of 1867. On July 4th, 1867, Cheyenne was named for the famous Plains Indian tribe. The easier grade over Sherman Hill was chosen by Dodge. The South Platte River route would have required too many mountains. Their goal was to maintain the easiest grade in the shortest distance possible. The construction train arrived Cheyenne, Dakota Territory on November 13, 1867. Passenger service started the next day. Prior to the arrival of the tracks, structures had been constructed and were ready for the first train. The original passenger depot was a 24 by 48 foot batten board building. Soon other buildings were built nearby to handle freight and express shipments. Cheyenne outlived the size of this depot quite early. The Union Pacific built and maintained large hotel and eating house facilities at major terminals. Until about 1890, dining cars were not provided, and passenger trains stopped for meals along the way. This structure was a little over a year old when sparks from a locomotive lodged in the roof shingle, and the wind fanned it, resulting in the building burning to the ground. It was replaced soon after, but that structure also burned down on November 25, 1886. Because the new station was under construction and eating accommodations were planned, the hotel was not replaced. Somebody's going to have to teach me how to do this. There. Oh. Huh. There. Sorry. The first roundhouse in Cheyenne was built of stone. It consisted of 20 stalls. Later, as motive power increased in size, this structure was replaced. The two images indicate this is a stereopticon view. Many of the earliest photographs showing Cheyenne were taken in this manner to promote the railroad and were sold to passengers and distributed in the East. A bird's eye view of Cheyenne in 1868 taken from the Union Pacific coaling dock looking north. Note the hotel and eating house was the largest building in this image. Cheyenne was the eastern base of the Rocky Mountains. At this location, the government construction bond payments increased due to the rocky terrain over Sherman Hill and across Wyoming. These construction trains required extra power to shove the camp cars over the grades in Wyoming. With the arrival of the railroad, Cheyenne became an instant trade center. Many Denver businessmen moved to Cheyenne, and its population increased as well. It became known as the Magic City of the Plains. Some reports indicate that we had around 4,000 inhabitants during the winter of 1867, many living in wagons, dugouts, and tents. The Cheyenne newspaper was started on September 19, 1867. Unlike many end-of-tract towns, Cheyenne became a permanent settlement. Much of this was due to the military establishments and the freighting south into Colorado. Immediately after the construction train's whistle tooted its arrival into Cheyenne, passenger service was inaugurated. Cheyenne became a distribution point for shipments to the rich Colorado mining areas, as well as handling supplies for Camp Carlin. Fort Russell was established nearby to protect the railroad workers from Indian attacks. This is one of the earliest promotional brochures that I have ever seen and it indicates Cheyenne 520 miles from Omaha, which is just a little bit long. There, I'll go back to my slides. Livestock raising in this region became a major industry. Stockyard facilities were required to handle these shipments. Due to open range lands, large herds of Texas Longhorns were driven north to summer pastures and later shipped from railroads such as at Cheyenne. After 20 years, the old wooden depot had served and outlived its purpose. In 1886, the cornerstone for a new structure was placed by the Masonic Lodge. This sandstone came from a quarry west of Fort Collins. This image was taken by a Cheyenne photographer, C.D. Kirkland, on March 22, 1887. The depot was completed and placed in service in September of 1887. A dining and lunchroom was placed in the western section. It served as headquarters for the Wyoming Division Superintendent for over 100 years. It is interesting to note some of the board fencing with billboards placed were used as subflooring on the upper floors, which were uncovered during the latest renovation. Looking north on Capitol Avenue, this image was made from the tower of the depot in 1890. Note the horse car at 16th Street. Also, note the sign on top of the Burlington station. This railroad arrived in 1887 and brought competition to the Union Pacific for freight shipments into this area. The Victorian appearing structure was originally the Warren Emporium and was acquired by the Burlington for their station. It was torn down in December of 1928 and replaced with a Spanish-style structure. This location is now the Depot Plaza. This view shows the completed Union Pacific station as it appeared in 1889. Note the clock had not been installed. The clock was placed in its appropriate position in January of 1890. A horse car is shown, a service that only lasted a few years. An electric street railway system came along later. General Dodge had selected Cheyenne for the major railroad shops, but Dr. Thomas C. Durant overruled his plans, and the first shops were placed in Laramie. However, on July 10, 1889, the cornerstone was placed for the massive shop facilities in Cheyenne. This image is looking in a southeasterly direction toward the original Johnson School. The small structure with the curved roof is the original Denver Pacific Depot, at that time used as a dwelling for maintenance workers. During the mid to late 1920s, the Union Pacific purchased all of the property in this area for the expansion of the large freight yard. The Denver Pacific Depot was then moved to 316 East 10th Street, and it is now a private residence. With the advancement of larger motive power, the 1890 shops became obsolete. The Union Pacific built a new facility for the repair work on the giant locomotives in use in 1919. This structure served the railroad well for the next 40 years, until the big boys were placed into retirement. Approximately one half of this structure remains today, and it is the home of the Union Pacific's heritage fleet, including the 844 and the rehabilitation of Big Boy 4014. An aerial view showing the complexity of the steam locomotive shops and the 48-stall roundhouse as it would have appeared during its glory days. The Shopcraft roster in 1948 contained 1,800 names of Cheyenne employees. This number did not include the operating department with train and enginemen, yardmen, clerical, track and signal employees, and a large force of employees working in the stores department. The Union Pacific provided good employment and allowed many families the ability to educate their children. Many railroad employees served our country during 2 world wars and other conflicts. Today, the facilities have been reduced due to dieselization, but employment is still in the hundreds. The streamline era for passenger travel came in 1934. This view of the city of Portland at the Cheyenne station was taken in 1938. Cheyenne passengers could travel in luxury on streamlined trains to Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, as well as Chicago in the east. The Union Pacific was the only railroad that provided dome dining cars, a real luxury. On May 1st, 1971, Amtrak took over passenger train operations in the United States, and these great Union Pacific trains were gone forever. Some of them were giant. A group of railroad workers dressed in their Sunday best stood around a gap in the single track at Promontory, Utah, shouting greetings while witnessing this moment, celebrating the accomplishment of their hard work. Monday, May 10, 1869, became one of the most important dates in United States history as the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific Railroads drove the Golden Spike. This was the completion of the first transcontinental railroad. We owe our thanks to President Lincoln, General Dodge, Jack Casement, the Ames brothers, and those countless courageous railroad workers who risked their lives, allowing us to partake today in Cheyenne's 150th anniversary. And we appreciate the Union Pacific for providing 150 years of great service to the community, along with the employment of thousands. Looking at the progressive Union Pacific in Cheyenne, located in the middle of that vast network, Cheyenne has grown from a rowdy cow and tent town, now one of the more important and great cities of the West. Thank you.